Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon I'm delighted to be joined by Patrick McGilp. Patrick, welcome to ACSOM. It's the Bulletin. It's Wednesday. Some of the viewers might recognise you from the state of politics. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well, Paul. I'm well. Delighted to be joining you. I think the last time I was on a Celtic-related bulletin, we just won 9 in a row. I'm hoping we can do one of them at the end of this season as well. But how are you doing yourself?
I remember that because it was very impromptu. I just sent out a message saying who fancies going live, because we had just been announced as 9 in a row winners in the darkness of the lockdown, I'm sure. And I think I was in a cupboard recording my bit. But yes, there is plenty to discuss. I know that we have been going through the international break. Celtic players were involved here and there. We'll touch on it slightly, but there is a big story developing at Celtic Park in relation to a potential wonderkid in Jota. I mean, when we signed him, you do your usual thing, don't you, Patrick? You do your YouTube searches, you look through all the stats, you try and develop an idea in your own mind as to what it is we're going to be bringing in. And I was quite vocal in the fact that I was really disappointed that we lost Ryan Christie in that transfer window. Now, I know that he's divided opinion over the last couple of years, but I just felt that there was enough signs under Ange Postecoglou that Ryan Christie could regain his peak form this season, and he would be vital for us. I mean, that was my feeling. I was disappointed that he left. Then we bring in Jota, and you start having a look back at what he's achieved in the game and the potential that he has. We have an opportunity. We have a buyout clause on this player of around £6.5 million to buy him from Benfica. We've got him on loan. He is a left winger, 22 years of age. First thing I'm going to ask is, did you catch the press conference yesterday? Because we do have some snippets here that we can run through. And we were in the presser. We were in the presser yesterday. Got to say, some of the questions that were asked were tremendous. They were fantastic. Hamish from Hale 67 Media got the best story of the day out of Jota. So we will be sharing all of that today, and we'll be talking about how well he came across and the fact that we have finally got someone to match Stuart Armstrong in the hair department as well, because that is one impressive installation of hair on that head of his. But I started talking to you beforehand because I appreciate, Patrick, that you're a wee bit younger than me. And I asked you if you remember the last Portuguese wonderkid that came to Celtic Park, because everybody thinks of George Cadet, right? And quite rightly so, because Cadet he was so prolific. He had the hair, he had the celebration. He was like an instant hero, because when he scored that goal against Aberdeen, having come on as a substitute, it was a 5-0 win. The cheers from Celtic Park, and it wasn't complete. The Celtic Park, the stadium, the renovations, the rebuild hadn't finished. Blew the airwaves. It actually blew the airwaves. It was so loud, Patrick. I mean, again, different generation from yourself, but what is your thoughts on Cadet? Is that someone that you look back on because you're a wee bit younger?
Definitely look back on. I wasn't alive when he was playing for Celtic, which, the front three that we had at that time, it sounded pretty impressive. Cadet, Van Hooijdonk and Di Canio, I think, for a season or two. It's a wonder we didn't win the league with those three up front. Even just the two of them up front would be absolutely phenomenal. We go on to get Larsson, which is, a stone itself. But Cadet, definitely one of our most well-known Portuguese players from the past. Probably one of the few that I know. Mm-hmm. You mentioned off there about a certain trialist. I'm sure we're going to talk about him. Who I don't think he did play for the club, did he?
He didn't.
That particular
he
trialist.
Didn't. There's a couple. There's actually a couple. Now the Cadet thing, the Cadet thing will lead us into this, but it also leads into a really good point that you made there, because Jackie McNamara was talking about it during the week, and I meant to talk about this yesterday, but Lawrence and I got caught up in whatever else we were discussing. But Jackie actually spoke about exactly what you said there. We had the front three. So we had the three amigos, if you like, in Di Canio and Cadet and Van Hooijdonk. Van Hooijdonk leaves before the other two. As well as those, though, we had Andreas Tom. And I've had a few chats with people during the week about Andy Tom because we've done the concept art for this jersey over here that we're going to be giving away if you subscribe to our channel on YouTube. So there's the first plug. And so we've got the concept art because it's a Puma top and he was the first East German to play for the unified Germany. And he was a great player, but I think often he was in the shadow of the three amigos because he wasn't the same kind of personality and character as those three players were, because they were either outspoken in the case of Di Canio and Van Hooijdonk, or they just had that iconic feel about them. Tom was undoubtedly as good as, in his own way, the three players that we talk about, but it's always the three amigos that get mentioned, plus Andy Tom. Andy Tom is a fantastic footballer. But Jackie Mack spoke about, he was launching his new book that I wasn't aware he was writing it, but it came out of the blue for myself. So it's called His Name is McNamara. And he's talking about the fact that the Celtic side lost these big name stars, but they went on, as you know, to win the league under Wim Jansen. Massive part of that, obviously, was Henrik Larsson. And he was trying to make that comparison with this season because we've lost, Chris Ayer, Ryan Christie, Odsonne Edouard, yet, he's saying that we could still, get the league title back. What do you think of that comparison that Jackie's made there, Patrick?
I think that's absolutely spot on, actually. I hadn't even thought of it in that way. If you're going to talk about the sort of infamous four that Lennon mentioned after Ferencváros last season, and Cham's moved on as well for absolutely nothing. We've terminated his contract. So you've lost the sort of four big name players that wanted away last summer. And, I think it's a bit too early to say whether we've adequately replaced them or not, but I think we've definitely got a much, much better manager in now. Postecoglou in the 8-10 weeks he's been in has worked absolute miracles. And I don't think we'll be losing the league by 25 points anyway, if we are going to lose out in the league. You're saying there about Andreas Tom. It's quite funny because you see the famous goal at Ibrox from about 35, 40 yards out, and you don't really hear anything else. Well, that's my personal experience anyway. You see this one goal and you never hear anything else about Andreas Tom, whereas you see Di Canio up at, I think it's Putaudry, he chips the keeper, and then you've got Van Hooijdonk in the cup final. You've got all these amazing moments of the trio that you were talking about, but you've only got the one for Tom. But yeah, I think Jota, I think he was valued at 9 million 2 years ago, and the Benfica manager George Jesus doesn't fancy him, so he put him out on loan. So I think there could be a real opportunity for us if he performs well for us to release him from that buyout clause. And then I think the Greek boy up front, Giakoumakis, I think his name is, was either the top or second top goal scorer in the Eredivisie last season. So that speaks for itself. But I mean, that's a good theory from Jackie McNamara there. I can believe that. I can go with that.
It is interesting, and of course, in the first 4 league games under Wim Jansen, we lost 2 of them. So there are comparisons there. One thing you didn't mention, Jackie, was that we also lost Paul McStay, and then very, very early into Wim Jansen's reign, we lost Peter Grant. Now, I know that Grant divided opinion as a footballer at Celtic Park, on the supporters bus going through. Half the bus loved him, half the bus thought he was useless. But there was one thing about Peter Grant, he always gave 100%. But we did lose a lot of experience as well as the flair in the three amigos going into Wim Jansen's reign. And as I say, Jackie Mack was promoting his book, which I'm pretty sure will be a cracking read. Apparently, we're going to be getting a Zoom call from Jackie next week, along with other Celtic fan media representatives. So we'll ask him all about that. We were going to be interviewing Giakoumakis this afternoon. Kevin Graham was doing the interview. He was all geared up with his questions, but it's been pushed to next week. So hopefully we'll be able to bring that to you next week. But we were in the press conference yesterday with Jota. Now, you always hear about wonder kids come through. I remember when Giggs was coming through, he was a Welsh wonder kid. Jota is a Portuguese wonder kid. Anyone who breaks in at 17 years of age, Patrick, is a wonder kid, it would seem. But you're looking at this guy, you think he is the real deal. There's an incredible, although we've got a buyout clause by taking him on loan of £6.5 million, there's an incredible buyout clause in his contract of something like 40 or 50 million pounds. You know how Ryan Gauld had that when he went to Sporting Lisbon, and that shows you how much they value the player. They don't want to lose the player, and so we're looking at him yesterday and his responses, and some of them are brilliant, and we're going to have a look at that. But you quite rightly said, through the George Cadet angle, let's have a wee chat about some of the other Portuguese players that have come in. The first one was also described as a Portuguese wonderkid, and his name was Danny. Now, Danny started off at Sporting Lisbon before having a spell at West Ham United under Harry Redknapp, and then he signs for Ajax, and Johan Cruyff insisted that he was to be given his number. That's how much he rated him at Ajax. He then goes to Benfica, which is your Jota link, before finishing off with Atletico Madrid. Once his career was winding down, now, the thing with Danny was he was a full Portuguese internationalist. He comes to Celtic on trial under Martin O'Neill. And he plays 2 bounce games, one against Livingston, one against Dundee, alongside another trialist by the name of Ivan de la Pena. Now, these 2 players, it was so exciting to have them in at Celtic, because you're kind of hoping it would sign both of them, to be fair. But actually, De La Pena went on to play in the final of the UEFA Cup in 2007. He went on to have a decent career following his trial at Celtic. We decided not to take them on. Now, I've got a couple of brilliant photographs of them, both on the park and then coming out of the stadium when they were playing Livingston and Dundee, and I'm going to share them on the social media channels as well, just as a reminder. But the story around Danny was quite an interesting one, Patrick, because he chucked it at about the age of 27. He never played another competitive game of football after he left Atletico Madrid. He did come to Celtic on trial, but he never ever played again. He was a playboy. He was one of these guys who went into modelling, TV, broadcasting and all that, and he just left the football behind. Bizarre. A totally bizarre story after such an incredible, introduction into football. So that was the guy I was telling you about, and I'm going to share some of the images that I've got. The other one was a player that came in on the recommendation of George Cadet, and his name was George Amaral. Now, he came in, again, he played with Sporting, as did Danny. He also, and Cadet, and he also played with Benfica. But he came in on trial under Tommy Burns, and he actually played a game for Celtic, Patrick, against Barcelona. It was a friendly game. So dig it out. There's a couple of the Portuguese links. But the new Portuguese star, who is sure to be an absolute hero, is Jota. So we had a wee chat with him yesterday, and he was asked what kind of a player he was.
I think I will bring... can I say this word again? Imprevisibility. Improvisation. Yeah, exactly. Sorry about the English. Improvisation, and I will try to be a dynamic player, trying to score a lot of goals, assists, playmaking, because I also like to assist my teammates, and just to be in the dynamic of the team. Yeah, I think that's it.
So first impressions, Patrick. Obviously, you can always talk a good game. Some might say that some people in ACSOM talk a good game or otherwise. It doesn't mean to say you're going to come out and do it, but very, very impressed with the way that he came across yesterday. He's a dynamic player. He likes goals and assists. What's your first impressions?
Brilliant, obviously. He certainly sounds like a real team player. Talking about assists there twice, he's more than happy to set people up, and with Kyogo making his unbelievable runs, that could be a partnership to look forward to. It's certainly better than Barkas last summer, saying I like playing at defensive midfield and left back. Getting a player who likes to play in his own position is quite new and quite good. But no, I'm looking forward to him. Hopefully he's young, quick, skillful. I think it's a bit of a free hit for us with it being a loan. The only danger is we run out of options at left wing if he's no use. But no, I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Big thing for me is when you look at the signings that we've brought in, I've been, like everybody else, absolutely blown away by Kyogo. We'll talk about him a wee bit later in the show, because obviously there's a wee concern about an injury he might have picked up. On the right-hand side as well, though, you've got Abada, who, other than maybe the game against Rangers and maybe a couple of his performances in Europe have been a wee bit quieter, he's been unbelievable at 19 years of age, going up the right wing. And then you've got Jota down the left. And, you just think of this trio. I mean, we were talking about three amigos, with Cadet and Di Canio and Van Hooijdonk. I mean, what we've got here, Kyogo, Abada, Jota, I mean, that is mouth-watering when you think about it. We've been dismantling teams 6-0 at home. Imagine these three guys giving it three-pronged attacks. I mean, as I say, the mind boggles if we can keep them all fit and get them in the team. When you go into these press conferences, Patrick, you go in with a whole list of questions just in case you're invited to ask your question last and everybody else has already asked all the good ones. But thankfully, I dived in second and asked him if he was aware of his history in relation to Lisbon, the city of his birth.
Yes, I'm pretty much aware of that. Yeah, a big achievement for you guys. Us guys. But you want me to keep on? I'm aware, yeah. I know that you won a big thing in Lisbon, in my hometown, and I'm glad it was in my beloved city, because that's an amazing city, and for us Celtic it was like a big achievement, and I know that that's a big and important thing for everyone. Yeah.
I love it, Patrick, when we bring these players in. I always remember people will be wondering why we're mentioning Di Canio so much, but it is relevant. When he signed, he spoke about his favourite team when playing Subbuteo as a child was the green and white hoops of Celtic. And then obviously, Ryan Christie goes to Bournemouth and he tries to convince everybody that he's always had a soft spot for Bournemouth. But, I love when these guys come in and they've done a bit of their homework. Jota, I threw in the Lisbon thing there with a view to then saying, obviously this is the importance of European football to Celtic. But he just picked up on it. And there's another few cracking stories that come through. When that happens, though, these people really do, they put themselves in a position where you like them before you've even seen them kicking a football.
I know. It's good when a player comes in and dead easy to warm to. It's a shame when it's a lone player. You get, you see these things on Twitter all the time. Don't get attached to a lone player because, they'll probably break your heart by not signing a permanent deal. You've seen that with Patrick Roberts. But no, I was actually saying, my mate was saying to me last week, when he first signed, you have the sort of immediate interview over Zoom. I think he was probably still in Portugal at the time. Excuse me. And, you always get the usual, I'd like to play at Paradise, I'd like to play in front of the fans in Europe and all that, all the sort of usual platitudes. But he was actually talking a good game and he knows his stuff, and it was actually quite an interesting interview to listen to. And in the press conference as well, he, as you say, he seems to have done his homework and he sounds like he knows a lot about the club. Hopefully he's just as good a player as he's a press conference attendee.
Absolutely. And we'll play you another video just now and we'll come back to this later on in the show. He was asked around the importance of coming to a club like Celtic where you've got to have that will to win.
Yeah, for sure. I think every Celtic player needs to be ready to win every game, and that brings us pressure, but that's a good pressure. Like, we are Celtic players because of that, and we have to live with it, and it's very good because it's the team that we represent, and we have to win every game to win every title. Yeah.
Every title. I mean, we did get used to winning every title for a wee while there, not just in the league, but 4 trebles in a row, Patrick. And I think my biggest concern, on the one hand, I knew, and we did a really good podcast, Colin and I, during the pre-season, we knew that we were probably going to get into double figures with incoming players. And we were probably going to be offloading 15 players. And we spoke about that. We've ended up bringing in a dozen. So on the one hand, you're thinking, well, that's a necessity and it's great that we've got the business done. But on the other hand, my big concern about that is how do you implement, this winning mentality in so many players who, until they come to Celtic, may not have had that winning mentality elsewhere and that philosophy. And that was my big concern. Do you think that with someone like Ange at the helm, you feel a wee bit more confident that by the time they pull on that jersey for real, they're already understanding what Celtic is all about?
I hope so. Jota certainly seems to understand what Celtic's all about, talking about the history, and he seems to know what it's all about. whether he can handle the pressure remains to be seen. But I'm not sure. I think he grew up a Benfica fan, didn't he? So,
Yeah.
I mean, Benfica have a very similar mentality. They don't win the league as often as we do because there's sort of 3 teams over there. But I'm sure as a Benfica fan, he'll know what it's like to having to win every game. I can't speak about the other two, Giakoumakis. He obviously scored a lot of goals last season, but I don't think they were anywhere near the title. I'm not entirely sure on that one. But in terms of Ange is he's just renewed everyone's faith really in the past 10 weeks. The football is absolutely phenomenal, and we're driving right into the 90th minute. I think you've seen, was it Dundee we played 2 weeks ago? We beat them 6-0. We're going at them right until the 90th minute, carving them open, scoring goals. So if we keep that up, if you take it game by game and just aim to win every single game, you've seen the training video from about 2 months ago where he says you keep pushing, you stop at half time and you stop at 90 minutes when you've won. You just always keep pushing. So I'm hoping with that mentality we can wrestle a few trophies back this season.
I'm hoping so as well. And as I say, though, that there's this exciting element to the trio that's developing in Abada and Jota and Kyogo. 3 players who I've got to admit, prior to this season, I had very little knowledge of the 3 of them. But already I've been very impressed with what I've seen. I'm going to run through some of the comments coming through. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on all the social media platforms. I appreciate that on YouTube, when I basically set up the broadcast studio, it appears on YouTube, but we do go out at 12:30 unless there's big news and we do an impromptu bulletin. But the reason I came on a wee bit earlier today, and you might have thought that we were never going to join you, was the fact that I was uploading these videos of Jota and just looking at his glorious hair as I was doing so. So the first one that's coming in from Gary Oliver. Welcome to the show, Gary. This point was raised yesterday. Before we even go live, people are giving it the old thumbs down. I wonder who that is, Patrick. But yesterday we called him out for it. And by the time I looked at the video, we'd had like 200 more thumbs up than we normally get. So nice one. Everybody out there who's supporting a Celtic state of mind by giving us a thumbs up and sharing our videos and retweeting what we're doing and all that kind of stuff. It's really appreciated. One of the points I wanted to talk about, I've mentioned them a couple of times, is Kyogo. Now, obviously, he was playing as part of the international break. He was playing for Japan, and against China, he comes off injured. He comes off early. It looks as though it's a knee injury. We've not really had any kind of update, but at this moment in time, Patrick, that would be devastating, to lose Kyogo for any length of time.
Yeah, people were saying when Edward and Christie left, you're 1 or 2 injuries away from a bit of a disaster here. If McGregor or Kyogo get injured, you're looking at any big game and you're starting to worry because we're very light all over the park despite making those 12 signings. He quote tweeted, I think, the result for Japan, saying really good to be back playing international football or something along those lines. So he seems to be in a positive spirit. But then again, when is Kyogo not in a positive spirit? Nothing can get him down. But yeah, they're probably just assessing it for a day or two, and fingers crossed it's not any length of time, because I think we could probably manage against Ross County without him. But you're looking at Real Betis on the Thursday, and you're thinking we really need him back for that.
This is the thing. You look at some of the previous seasons, Patrick, when we've come up against opposition, and then we've met them later on in the season, and you realise that the team that we had was at an embryonic stage. There was a few players not in there. We were a better side than, say, Cluj. And I actually believe that we're a better side than Midtjylland. It was just circumstances, lack of personnel, etc. So what you want to be doing is coming up against the likes of Betis, and you want to be able to field your strongest 11. I mean, that goes without saying, but I just think that when you click in to that kind of momentum that we did have up until the Rangers game, and with Kyogo absolutely flying, you want that to continue, and you want, obviously, Jota to come in and just click into that as well. So it'll be a huge disappointment. Now, Donny Boy comes in to say, a bit early to say, talking about Jota, has not seen him play apart from some clips, but looks to be decent, hoping he gets off to a flyer like Kyogo. I think what we've also got to kind of consider is that we've lost, I know Ayer was gone what feels like ages ago, but we've lost two big players in Christie, very creative players who will get goals and create assists in Christie and Edouard. So there was a slight concern that a lot more of the kind of pressure to do that would be on Kyogo. And I think that, that's another great reason for bringing in someone like Jota, who, when you speak to him, he talks all about being creative, being entertaining, creating assists and scoring goals. So I think that another element of Jota coming is he's going to take a wee bit of that pressure off of Kyogo, because it would be easy for us to expect him to score every single week, but he's going to have patches during the season as well, Patrick, Kyogo, where he has a wee loss of form, a wee dip in form.
100%, and I'm sure he's got, I think it's 6 goals out of 7, which he's probably not going to be able to keep that up. If he does, we're in for a phenomenal season, but he's not going to be able to keep that up, and that's why bringing in players like forgotten his name, Giacomakis.
Yes.
Bringing in players like that's so important. If Jota can get off to a good start, get an early goal against Ross County or something, that would work. That would do wonders for him, I think. And all the players that we've signed as backup. Turnbull's coming onto a game as the season progresses. Rogic is becoming the player of old that we had under Dyla and Rodgers, which is great to see. But yeah, as you say, we'll need all these players five and fit for the full season, because we are light in some areas, but the players we do have appear to be top quality.
No, they certainly do. And Danny Boy pointing out, obviously, the resemblance that Jota has with a vintage George Michael from the mid-'80s, long before your time, Patrick. But I'm sure you've seen the pictures of George in his absolute prime. Monty comes in to speak about his disdain over Subutu. I'll not bring it up, Monty, because we try and keep the show clean from any kind of expletives. You ended up kicking off when you were beaten. Well, again, Subutu wasn't a big game for me. All we wanted for Christmas was a Dukla Prague away kit, though. And now, international football, talking of which, you mentioned Tommy Rogic, 2 games under his belt there. He played the full 90 and he played 87 minutes for Australia. Now, normally with international football, I look upon it thinking to myself, can we not just get back to Celtic? But I've been looking for positives, and I think that's one positive, not only the start to the season that Tommy Rogic's had, Patrick, but the fact that he's got another couple of games under his belt. He wasn't hooked after 60 or 70 minutes. He seems to be getting to that stage where, he might be able to actually provide a lot more this season than he has done in seasons gone by.
Yeah, the only worry with, with Rogic is, that the 11-hour flight or something over to Australia. I couldn't tell you where the games have been played. I imagine it is that part of the world, though. And then, as long as your players don't pick up an injury, it's a successful international break from a Celtic point of view. I know Montgomery and Welsh played quite well for the under-21s against Turkey. Montgomery get quite a good assist. But when it comes to injuries, we've discussed Kyogo. We don't know what the situation is there, how long he'll be out for. McGregor was on the receiving end of a nasty tackle. I think that was in the first half last night against Austria. Luckily, he played on and appears to be totally fine. But as you say with Rogic, what's that, 178 minutes or something under his belt? And to get him to match fitness where he can play 90 minutes at least once a week would be absolutely phenomenal, because as I've said 2 or 3 times, we're very, very light in the midfield, and you need all your players 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you make a great point there about the international, because it's easy to focus on players like Callum McGregor getting games and Tommy Rogic, but the point you made there on Welsh and Montgomery, they were both making their competitive debuts for the under-21s. I know that Welsh had played a couple of friendlies before, but Welsh was the captain, and as you say, Montgomery got an assist. And I'm looking at those 2 young players at Celtic who have obviously come through our own academy system. And I guess you can throw Ralston in there as well, because I've bemoaned the dearth of talent that's come through at Celtic recently. We speak about McGregor and Forrest, but they're getting to that point now, Patrick, where they're senior pros at Celtic. They're late 20s. McGregor now the captain of the club, obviously. And there seems to be a whole generation of these players who are completely missing until you get to the age group of Ralston, who's 22, Welsh, who's 21, Montgomery, who I think is still 19, isn't he? So it's almost as if we've missed out that generation between Ralston and, Forrest and McGregor, albeit Tierney did come through at the same time as Ralston and we sold him on. But I don't know. I mean, that's a lost generation of Celtic talent that didn't really make the grade for us. But it's good to see these young guys who are in and about the first team also starting for on an international stage.
100%. And, it was quite... I didn't know that was Welsh's first competitive start. I thought it was actually quite a regular player for the under-21s, but obviously not. And it was really impressive that he's a captain. I've never played any sort of football. I'm not sure if you have in your youth, but I've never played with any team, any Sunday league. But just watching Welsh on the park, he seems to be talking a lot. He seems to be taking charge of the back four. And, Starfelt and Joe Hart behind them as well seems to be doing that a lot. So you get three really vocal players there. So making him captain, it does sort of make sense for the under-21. So it'll be a good experience for him. And then I think Montgomery is only 18 or 19. And the assist he put in, when I first watched it, I thought it might have been a fluke or something. But he really does pick out the striker. And it's actually a good finish and a good cross. So, you could add Mikey Johnson to that list of young players. It's a shame about his injuries the past 12 to 18 months, but I really fancy him as a player. It's getting to that point where you think he might not make it, because in the past 18 months, I think he's played about 5 games and none of them have been starts. So it's a question of whether he makes it or not. But, Ralston's coming onto a game, Welsh coming onto a game. Montgomery looks a really promising player, so hopefully the academy's turning around a bit.
The thing with Welsh, you questioned my own football abilities, Patrick, but I think I'll leave it at that, because I don't think anybody wants to hear about my football career. But what I did do is I spoke to football coaches who are involved in youth football, who had seen a lot of Stephen Welsh coming through as a young player. And I remember speaking at the beginning of the season, or maybe at the end of last season, where one coach in particular, who's worked with a lot of the guys who have come through in Scottish football recently, who basically said, one thing that he hadn't seen yet from Welsh was his range of passing. And then Alan Morrison done a wee bit of work on his passing, and the results were basically saying that he's one of the best passers of the ball at the football club. But we hadn't seen a massive, or it hadn't stood out as much, Patrick. But it's something I've been kind of watching keenly on. And I think, his distribution is excellent. But the other aspect of his game that I really like, and he's no the finished article yet, I don't think, but the other part of the game that I really like in relation to Stephen Welsh is this ability to lead. We saw it last season when he was leading the likes of Diego Laxalt through games, a guy who's a full international, played at World Cups, played for AC Milan. Yeah, Stephen Welsh, and it wasn't a language barrier. It wasn't because he didn't speak good English. It was basically a positional thing, and Stephen Welsh is actually talking him through the games. So I think he's got that leadership quality, and it's great to see him captain in Scotland at under 21 level. David Kelly, on the back of the Di Canio Sabutio memory, reminds us that Nguemo said that he listened to Celtic games on the radio when he was a kid in Africa. But I mean, that, as good as it is, doesn't top the Ryan Christie. I've always had a soft spot for Bournemouth one, which was just outrageous. Now, we're talking about getting back into stadiums and how much that is a thrill for everybody who watches Celtic and football in general. But we are hearing rumblings that we're going to be getting into away games very soon as well. And there is a suggestion that as much as 7,000 tickets have been given to Celtic for our visit to Livingston on the 19th of September. How key will this be to our comeback, our rebuilds, getting that momentum as well away from home, Patrick?
Absolutely. I mean, I heard a stat after the Hearts game that we haven't won a domestic away match since February, and I thought, surely not. And then you actually look, there's about 6 or 7 games where we've played away domestically, and it's been draw, loss, draw, loss, draw, loss. And I think it's actually the 4-0 Kilmarnock. In fact, no, sorry, it's 2-1 at St Johnstone when we turned it around in the second half. I think that was the middle of February. I think it might have been Shane Duffy's last game for Celtic as well. But that's an incredible stat, and getting the away support back
Now, normally what happens with Patrick, and I see this every week on the politics show, is that at 34 minutes, his signal drops out. And we don't know why, but he will be back. I can guarantee you that he will be back. And it happens every single week. And here he is. And I don't know where the gremlin's coming from, but it's always at 34, 35 minutes, Patrick.
It is. I think it's my phone that does it. But there you go. But yeah, as I was saying, the away support's absolutely crucial. And, you know, when allocation like 7,000, even I might get a ticket. I've only been to 2 or 3 away games. But yeah, absolutely crucial. And I think Livingston, another game where we really have to prove ourselves, because I think it's 4 or 5 games we've played since they've came back up, and we've not won a single one of them. And I don't think we've won there since like 2006 or something. It's an absolutely crazy statistic. But I think it's really, really crucial that we win that game.
That is an incredible stat if you think about it. And it's a great point that you make, because even this season, if you look at the defeats that we've had this season, both of them have been away from home. Both of them have been in scenarios where we're going into an environment where there are no Celtic supporters there to give the players that additional support that obviously is extremely important. I mean, I've heard a lot of the people at the club talking about how important that is. And on the one hand, you think to yourself, well, yeah, it is. On the other hand, you think, you know, that they're giving it almost in a cliched way. But I think that stat speaks for itself. We have not performed well away from home. And the fact that we will be getting back into games as early as the 19th of September is absolutely crucial. Now, someone has brought up that we are we're able to speak about the ACSOM Awards. Now, you brought it up, so I will mention it as well. And they have actually just voted for us, so thank you very much, Douglas Hughes, for doing that. I'm just having a wee look at some of the platforms that we're on, and what I've done is in the description section, I've put the link underneath the video. So if you do want to get in there and vote for a Celtic state of mind, please do so. I am just about to put the wee link on a mention as well, as we used to call it, a mention. There we go, and it's up there. That's where you vote for a Celtic state of mind. So get voting. We are in 3 different categories. We're in the best podcast for international, best club content creator, again, for international, and most importantly, best charitable campaign. That's the final category that's on the page. Just go there, give us a wee vote, and lend us a helping hand, as you do every single day. Thank you very much for that. And people are also in the comment section, Patrick, telling you to top up your meter every time you drop out. Now, we're talking about fixtures. Before we get back to the absolutely beautiful Jota and his videos, let's have a wee chat about the Ross County game coming up. We've won 2 games, both at home in the league, 6-0. Patrick, let's have a wee look at what we do with all these new signings going into the Ross County game. How safe is it to bring in like a clutch of new players who have never played together? How are we going to introduce it, and what kind of lineup would you be expecting this weekend?
I don't think I'd change the back 4 too much. In saying that, it was a strange back 4 against Rangers, because you had Juranovic playing left back. I'll be honest, I like Montgomery. I'd start him at left back against Ross County. I think he's more than capable. He showed against, I think it was St Johnstone in May, when he started against St Johnstone, that he was more than capable, and he's really, really impressed this season. So I'd start him. I'd keep Welsh, Starfelt, and Joe Hart, and you know, it's 50-50 whether it's Juranovic or Valson, because I think both are more than capable. Midfield 3 of, I've just realised I'm giving a starting 11 here. Midfield 3 of McGregor,
right.
Turnbull and Rogic. And then, you know, you actually forget Forrest is still in contention there, but you know, I'd stick with Abada. I'd play Kyogo if you can, and then I think I'd go for Jota as well. And then if Kyogo isn't available, probably Giacomakis, because you'd want to save Kyogo for Betis on Thursday if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can't underestimate any side. We've seen what happened last season when we came up against Ross County at home. You know, we were beaten by St Mirren at home for the first time in 31 years, I think it was. Obviously, we swept them aside this season, but we certainly can't underestimate any of the opposition. Someone brings up an interesting point in the comment section saying that most of Jota's football at Benfica has been for, you know, B sides or youth sides. Just have a wee look at his stats. He's played 34 games for Benfica's first team, and he played 18 games for Real Valladolid when he was out on loan. And all of those games, he scored 4 goals and he's had 3 assists. But in terms of the reserves or the Benfica B side, he has played 47 games for them as well. So that's his stats before going into Ross County. And when I'm looking at the team myself, Patrick, the way I would play it, I would try and keep some kind of fluidity in here. But I said yesterday that with Hart, Ralston at right back, Juranovic playing out of position at left back, which, by the way, I take your point on Montgomery. I just think he looked really impressive when we were up against Rangers. He was in a brand new team. He had never played with any of his teammates. He played out of position, and I thought he was still pretty solid. And I would loathe to drop Ralston on current form. But in the central defensive area, I still feel that Ange Postecoglou is searching for his partnership, his pairing, and I don't think he's got the confidence in Welsh and Starfelt yet. And I'm only basing that on the fact that he's already dropped Welsh this season. And I thought at that time it was unfair. But I can see him bringing in Carter Vickers if fit and available. I can see him bringing him in to the team. In the midfield, I would expect, if they're all fit after international duty, McGregor and Turnbull. If Rogic gets back in time after that long haul flight that he inevitably will be on just now, I guess, I would play Rogic as the number 10. And I would love to see Abada, Kyogo and Jota, you know, as that 3-pronged left, right and centre attack. If indeed Kyogo is fit, we don't know yet, we're waiting on an update. But of the newbies that have come in, I would be throwing Jota and Carter Vickers in from the start. And, you know, I get why we would stick with Welsh and Starfelt, and I totally understand why we would play Montgomery, because I'm normally against playing players out of position. But I just think Juranovic is going to be difficult to drop, and I certainly wouldn't drop Ralston at this moment in time. Again, hopefully Ralston's fit, because he wasn't called up for Scotland due to medical grounds. Now, I don't know much more about that, Patrick, but, you know, right back really is a position we can't afford to lose any players from. So in relation to that, that's how I would start. In terms of a quick prediction from you as well, we're going to get back to winning ways, Patrick?
I just have to stick with the tried and tested 6-0. It's been working for us at home recently, so I'll just go for that. And them to go down to 10 men, because that's happened twice as well against both Dundee and who else did we play? I want to say Kilmarnock, but it can't be them. I've forgotten. Dundee and Ross County.
St Mirren.
Oh, St Mirren, sorry. Ross County's this weekend.
But the thing with this as well is, if that's a tried and tested, if 6-0 at home is a tried and tested, Patrick, I'll take that all day long. Let's have a wee chat about the Europa League then, because we spoke about the squads. They've been announced. Now, Julien's in that squad, which is brilliant. You know, that's massive in relation to his loss and how much we've missed him since, you know, the final game of 2020 where he collided with a post against Dundee United. He's coming back in. I've just been talking about the central defensive area. When he comes back in, Patrick, is he your number one centre-half plus another?
I think that's a question you probably have to answer at the time. I think on current form you could probably drop Starfelt for him, because the high profile mistakes that he's been making. But, you know, Welsh is still young. Whether you want to play a player so young all the time, it's hard to say. But I'm a big fan of Julian. I'm a big fan of Welsh, so I'd have to go with those two, and I'd probably drop Starfelt, because all three I think have got a mistake in them, unfortunately. But Julian, I know Alan Morrison's been talking about how neither of the two centre halves are over 6 foot. So having a centre half over 6 foot That'd be a good start, and he's what a threat from set pieces he is as well. So I'd probably switch Starfelt from just now, but if Starfelt lives up to his €5 million price tag by the time he comes back in October, November time, maybe not.
Lawrence and I spoke about this yesterday. We are weak at the back with set pieces, and we're not great up front when it comes to set pieces, and in particular corner kicks. Julien could answer both of those questions. I mean, he does have the height, as Alan Morrison says, but he's also got a bit of a goal scoring record, which is impressive. I mean, I've seen midfielders with a goal in every 6 games who would be pretty happy with that. And that's his kind of ratio. 61 games played, 10 goals scored. Important goals as well, Patrick. So I think when he comes back, what I really am hoping for is that he comes back for a prolonged period, because it seemed as though when he was injured, he'd already been out, for a period of time. Then he misses 9 months. Jonathan Brown, it's all about opinions, of course, because Jonathan, who will start in defence against County, I would go for our new recruit, and Welsh, our new recruit from Tottenham Hotspurs as well. And that in itself has given us a brand new friendship with Catholic United, and I keep saying it because I think it's tremendous. Apparently, very quickly they ran out of pin badges, but now their kit supplier can't even keep up with the amount of requests for green and white hoops. So I love that. Tremendous. And hopefully there's loads of money going into the coffers of that club as well. Jay Walshy, thank you very much for getting involved and voting for a Celtic state of mind. The way that I see this is that somebody said on the Twitter page just last week, you have won an award, and I think somebody else should win one. And that's fine, absolutely, of course it is. But in relation to the categories that we're in, there are no other Celtic platforms involved. So if you're going to vote for Barcelona over a Celtic state of mind, come on now, I'm going to take that personally. Get the votes in for ACSOM. It would be tremendous to go down there, Patrick, down to London, and come back with a treble, because it's been a wee while since we won a treble. But listen, I'm not getting too greedy. I'd love to just to get one. Go in and give us a wee vote, and we will be eternally grateful for that. The other person who is included in the squad, who we have spoken about a fair bit on the podcast, is none other than Liam Scales. He's come in from Shamrock Rovers, just over £500,000, hugely highly rated in Ireland, in the League of Ireland, and obviously called up by Stephen Kenny for the Republic of Ireland squad, Patrick. I was of the view, as I've said a couple of times, that he's not being bought as a first-team pick, and I've been told otherwise by just about everybody that's seen him in the flesh. He's been given a number 5 jersey. Where do you stand on Scales? And again, he's been given the number 5, but he can play left-back as well as centre-half.
Yeah, I mean, when we first seen the link, I think everyone thought, gosh, here's Dermot Desmond doing somebody a favour in Ireland, buying a player for a couple of pennies, maybe giving Shamrock Rovers some of his money. God knows. But you've seen all these players come over from Ireland. Remember the night we signed Armstrong and Mackay-Steven in 2015? We signed an Irish winger called Duffy, and we all thought this was one for the future, and then he never made an appearance ever again. And, I hope Scales doesn't fall into that category, because I think he scored a goal in Europe for Shamrock Rovers before he left. People are saying he can play centre-half. I think you just mentioned there, he can play centre-half as well as left-back. I'm not going to lie, I haven't seen him play. But, if he's scoring goals in Europe for Shamrock Rovers, he must have something about him. And he's probably already higher up in the pecking order than Bolly Bolingoli. So, and, with Taylor injured, I think a shoulder injury, that will keep him out for a few weeks at least. So it's between Scales, Montgomery and Bolly at the moment. So we'll probably see him get some game time, and we'll be able to judge him fairly soon. You mentioned Bolingoli, one of the guys that you think, is he still here? Yes, he is, but he's not in the squad. He was one of the omissions from the Europa League squad. On the question of left backs, of course, we've got Greg Taylor, Bolingoli, Montgomery. We've now got Scales who can play left back. We've been playing Juranovic at left back, even though he's a right back. And we had Leo Held, who obviously went to Leeds United. So the Bolingoli situation is such that I think Bolingoli and Barkas, between now and January, we need to find a way to get them off the wage bill. Both of those players. They're not contributing to the club in any way, shape or form. Barkas is in the squad.
as the second or the third goalkeeper. He is in the Europa League squad, but Bolingoli isn't. Now, he'll be on a decent wage. He'll be on between 12 and 15,000, which is there or thereabouts the average for a first-team player, or the kind of middle ground. And he's just never going to make an impression at Celtic. And I think the hard work needs to be done behind the scenes to ensure that Bolingoli and Barkas are relieved of their duties at Celtic and can go elsewhere and play football. Because again, at that age, Patrick, they need to be playing. You can't sit for a season or 18 months fit to play and you're sitting on the bench. Of the squad, of the players who have been left out, the other maybe surprising omission was Connor Hazard. Now, obviously, we have spoken about the charity weekend. That happened in the quadruple treble weekend when we beat Hearts in the delayed Scottish Cup final. And he was one of the heroes of that performance and that win. He was given, after that game, a brand new contract, a bumper 4-year deal. He's playing for Northern Ireland as recent as during the week there, yet he's not in the squad. Is that because we're maybe trying to fashion some kind of deal? Because, I mean, obviously we're out of the transfer window. Again, I wouldn't like to think that a young player's just going to be hanging around not playing any games.
I'd hope not. I remember in that cup final, he makes 2 errors from a corner to give away 2 Hearts goals. I think we were poor. Apart from the first half, I think we were poor that day in that cup final. But he makes 2 mistakes. He sort of goes to grab the ball and he doesn't quite make it. And I think some people were trying to write him off. But, he's a young player. I don't think you can write someone off at the age of 21, 22, making their 4th competitive start or whatever it was. And then you have the 1-1 draw with Hibs when we've got all those players out after the Dubai trip. And I think he comes out to try and collect a corner in that game as well. And after that, he doesn't really get any game time. Now, I'm not a big fan of Scott Bain. I never really have. I think he's quite a poor shot stopper and quite a poor goalkeeper overall, actually. And I was giving Barkas chance after chance after chance last season, but after the Midtjylland era, I think it's just time to give up with him. So when you consider that those two are quite poor options, I'm very, very surprised that Ange hasn't given Hazard a chance, really, because I thought it was a pretty impressive shot stopper and he saved 1 or 2 penalties in that cup final as well. So it's a shame that he's not included, but hopefully we'll see him in the domestic games.
I think that's fair enough, actually. Your assessment there of the goalkeeper situation. It was interesting. Yesterday, I was listening to an interview with Anthony Joseph. I forget who was interviewing him, and he was talking about the fact that before we actually went in for Barkas, Joe Hart was a player of interest for Celtic. So he's come a year too late for us, and he reminded us, and it was spot on, that Ange was bigging up Barkas to try and say, that he's my first choice goalie, and as you say, it comes down to the crunch, and he loses it against Midtjylland, and that was at a point where things, even though we had a sending off, that was a massive part of that game at home. Had we come away with that 1 goal from Abada, and gone away from home, it might have been a different story. So very, very unfortunate. John Francis comes in on the point of Big Julien in terms of presence and height in both boxes. You have to hope that he gets back in the team. But having 4 centre-halves, it gives us options in competition, something that we have been crying out for, Patrick. And great avatar, John Francis. Loved that album, Actune Baby. First band ever seen U2 at Celtic Park, 1993. Brad Hoyt, 1993. Patrick, I mean, that's just
like that's
like in the olden days for you, isn't it? I mean, that's black and white for you. Brad Hoyt, PJD, going Shimo Mofo while moonwalking, and his wig is on fire collecting his award. Listen, if we win the treble, I will do a moonwalk live on stage, right? And I'll say that right now. I'll need to get practicing because I've never done it before. But I think it is time to bring up another bit of love for Liam Scales, very good player, as everybody keeps reminding us, and I'm looking forward to seeing him playing. I really am. And here we go. Can you put a link to share on Facebook? Mark, after this show, I will be refreshing all the socials with the links as well. But it should also be in the description. A clickable link should be in the description of all the social pages. Thanks very much for helping us out. It would be tremendous to win it. And if it's a charitable one, We'll win it on behalf of everybody that was involved as well. Let's have another wee look at some of these videos in relation to our Portuguese wonderkid. He was speaking about his inspirations.
Yeah, when I was younger, I always look up to Cristiano Ronaldo because it was at the time that he was breaking through in United, and I watched every single game of him. And I just wanted to copy everything. And I think pretty much of my style of game was thinking on what things he was doing in United. Yeah, and it was good times to watch him. And he's back in the UK, so he's close to us. Yeah.
I think the question was along the lines of George Cadet, and he turned it round to Cristiano Ronaldo. However, I think really when we're talking about any kind of Portuguese footballer coming through the ranks, are going to look up to Ronaldo. I appreciate the fact that we're in the last 5 minutes, and I certainly don't want to miss the best question of the day was asked by Hamish Carton, and this is the response when Hamish asked our new signing if he had gone to watch Benfica play Celtic at any point.
Yes, actually, there's a really good story about the game at home in Benfica in Lisbon, because in the end, I was in that game. I was in the stands watching the game, and in the end of the game, there was like 3 Celtic fans who were walking with me, and I was very young. I was like 11 years old or something like that, and they asked me if we wanted to change scarves, because you guys have the green and white scarf and we have the red and white scarf, and they said, yeah, do you want to switch up? And I said I wanted. So I think I still have that scarf at home. So coincidences or no, I think the story was meant to be. So yeah, right now I'm a Celtic player, and I think it was a good thing in the past.
It was meant to be, Patrick. I love that story. And I could see Hamish with a massive big smile on his face, realising that he had just won a watch by asking the best question in the room. And I wonder, who are the Celtic fans who exchanged a scarf at that particular game? They'll be out there, Patrick. They will be out there, and it would be interesting to know that as well. I love these wee stories, not as good, as I say, as Nguemo tuning into Celtic games in Africa, but there's also, a backup response, I think, when he was speaking to the mainstream media, where he spoke about the fact that, because of that, he had been paying attention to Celtic over the years as well. So I think we're all in on Jota, even though we've not seen him playing competitively for Celtic yet. One story that was quite interesting in the transfer window, having watched the international games this week as well, Patrick, is the fact that Ali McCann, who's a player who's impressed so much for that excellent St Johnstone side that's been built up over the last few seasons, double winner. He went down south for just over £1 million, and he signed for Preston. Now, we've been talking on the podcast time and time again about areas of the park that perhaps still need a bit of strengthening. Ange Postecoglou's spoken about going back into the transfer market in January and potentially back into the J-League to bring some more talent into Celtic Park from that market. Is this an area of the park that you feel we still lack a wee bit in? And do you think that Ali McCann would have been a good buy at such a low price?
Absolutely. I think both St Johnstone and Celtic have let their fans down here. It's poor business from both, because you got $2.5 million for Christie that day, and I think it was 17.5 for Edward that night as well. So you had plenty of money to spend. So I think you could have offered them £1.5 million, £2 million. And because we're so light in the midfield, I think we've only got 5 options for 3 positions. It's a no-brainer, really. It's really, really unfortunate. You were saying there about the J-League. I've seen a few people on Twitter say, maybe we're just going to invade the J-League in January. But we've got 6 European games, hopefully 3 cup games, and 18 league games before then. And with a squad as light as ours is at the moment, especially in the midfield, you'd be hoping for a player or two like Ali McCann, because he was absolutely fine against Galatasaray. He held up the ball well, didn't lose the ball at all. Went man for man with whoever was marking him. He didn't. He was a complete standout for St Johnstone. didn't look out of place at all. So very disappointing that we didn't go in for him, to be honest.
I think so. I mean, he was a name that started cropping up in discussions that we were having with contributors like Tony Haggerty, like Colin Watt. These are guys within the ACSOM group who keep an eye on the wider Scottish game, and they were talking about guys like Alan McCann, and obviously they were there. They were players of note. We should have been taking an interest in them. But I take your point. On the one hand, St John's should have got more cash for a player like that. So, yeah, you've let your club down only getting 1.2, I think it was. And then Celtic should have definitely been bringing him in. On the flip side of that as well, we have brought in a midfielder in James McCarthy. He's only played a couple of games due to the fitness issues at this moment in time. I have said a few times, people are going on about Liam Scales, and hopefully I'm proved wrong because, I wasn't too sure about the signing initially, as being the dark horse. I'm going to put my neck in the line and say I think McCarthy, once we get him fit, is going to be a revelation at Celtic this season. How do you see that one? Because he's kind of been put in the shadows here because we've been bringing in the exciting players like Kyogo, Abada, and now Jota. But in the background there, we've got a player who's 30 years old who, at any point in the last 5 years, had we signed him, it would have been a massive signing, and he's just came in fairly quietly, and he's not really performed yet. Can you see him hitting that form and being an important part of this team this season, Patrick?
If we can keep him fit, I absolutely can. I've got absolutely no doubt the quality that he possesses, because when you're playing for the likes of Wigan, Everton, and then Crystal Palace, you've got to have something about you. And if he can stay fit, and that's the big question, I think he'll be an absolutely phenomenal player for us. And I think it's a 4-year deal we've got him in for. So I'm hoping that he can stay fit for even half of that, and we'll have an absolutely phenomenal player. I think the one unfortunate statistic is Callum McGregor played more minutes last season than McCarthy had for the last 5 seasons, which is, it's not the best statistic, but I'm hoping that he's over that now and he can get back to playing his football.
Yeah, I hope so as well. And as you've already confirmed, 4 years. So we want him to get in and about that team. There are certain games where, they're just built in Scottish football for a player like James McCarthy. Now, Patrick, it's been an absolute pleasure you coming back into ACSOM, and hopefully we see your face more regularly on the team. You'll see my face more regularly, unfortunately, for some, presenting a wee bit more regularly. And we might also have the return of an old legend next week. So keep your eyes peeled for that one as well on A Celtic State of Mind. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. I keep reminding you to, if you're able, get in on that voting page and give us a wee vote. I would love to go down to London next month and come back up with 1, 2, or even a treble of trophies that I might present on that wall right there, because it's a big grey wall. That would be absolutely tremendous. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on the socials page. We'll be back at 12:30, so make sure you tune in to A Celtic State of Mind.